Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the world of comic books comes one of the most iconic superheroes of all time, and an animated feature that sees his past come back to haunt him while he fights to protect his city and also struggle with his future as Batman. We're talking about Mask of the Phantasm. Mask of the Phantasm was an animated film directed by Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski on a story by Alan Burnett. It was released on December 25, 1993, and was distributed by Warner Brothers. The film focuses on Batman and other characters created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger and published by DC Comics. In the movie, a young Bruce Wayne meets Andrea Beaumont, the daughter of a wealthy businessman in Gotham City. During the course of the story, Bruce and Andrea begin a relationship. However, that relationship is immediately in doubt due to Bruce's commitment to avenging the murder of his parents. Bruce doesn't reveal his intentions and tries to juggle his plans with the possibility of abandoning his mission altogether in favor of a new life with Andrea. Bruce eventually proposes to Andrea, who readily accepts, but he's later shocked when Andrea and her father suddenly disappear, leaving Gotham and a goodbye letter behind. Bruce decides to recommit himself and eventually becomes Batman, the protector of Gotham City. However, Andrea comes back into his life 10 years after their separation, and with her return comes old wounds and old enemies. A new masked figure known as the Phantasm also becomes a problem in the city, and Bruce is forced to find this vigilante, and along the way, rekindles his romance with Andrea. Batman ultimately tracks down the Phantasm, but gets much more than he bargained for in the process. Mask of the Phantasm was a hit with critics and fans alike. It continues to be hailed as one of the best animated comic book films of all time, and arguably the best Batman film ever made. And that's the lowdown on Mask of the Phantasm. It's not often you get a main character, the central character, the primary character of any story, being able to have a story told in multiple formats. Sometimes it's the point of a film, perhaps a trilogy, perhaps more. A John Wick suddenly springs to mind. I don't know if there's ever been an animated John Wick series, but I mean, anything could happen, kids. But for the most part, John Wick is in the, on the silver screen, big budget films. That's how you see that character. James Bond, sort of the same way. Of course, obviously, Bond came from the books by Ian Fleming. But yeah, I mean, there is a way to translate characters and to do them on the big screen. But in terms of doing characters, not just on the big screen, but let's say on TV as well, and not just on TV, in animated form. And, that sort of runs the gamut of how much you can do with a character. The easiest characters to mention in this conversation, I guess, are comic book characters, because they're the ones that you can adapt perhaps the easiest to any sort of medium. And we've seen over the years multiple times with multiple characters. And as we know, comic books, comic book movies, the comic book movie genre, streaming services, TV, movies, animated features have taken over the planet. And yes, we here at the 6M highly endorse this. And we're very happy because, nerds. So what are you going to do? One character that we've talked about here in the 6M a couple of different times now, and I'm sure we'll talk about him much more in the future, is, of course, the Dark Knight detective, Batman. Multiple films over the years, multiple different actors portraying him from the movie serials of the 40s all the way up until Batfleck and, of course, Robert Pattinson. Depending upon when we release this particular episode, The Batman, starring Robert Pattinson, may or may not have been released. You may or may not love it. We may or may not agree. But one thing I think all Batman fans can agree on, don't know if I've ever met anyone that doesn't, is the animated series is a classic. It is fantastic. It is amazing. It did the work that Tim Burton did in the '89 Batman film and carried it through. And did much more on top of that, far and outlasting anything Burton did in terms of Burton was around for 2 films and that was it. The animated series continued on for a good long time, told some amazing stories. And one of the stories that the animated series told was Mask of the Phantasm. This goes back to my initial point of a character being able to have a story told in multiple formats. Mask of the Phantasm, this here's a cartoon movie. Not really. this kind of feels like, to me anyway, a big budget film. This feels like the real deal. And not that the animated series ever felt like a kid's cartoon. To me personally, it never did. I can't speak for anyone else out there, but to me, it felt like not necessarily, well, this is for adults. It just felt like a really good show, a really good series, and I really respected it and appreciate it and still do. Mask of the Phantasm feels like this thing could become a live action film and be maybe a singular and isolated event. There's no sequels. It can be out of continuity. They did a Joker movie, for crying out loud, Phil. Why can't they do a Mask of the Phantasm film? So, how long had it been since you've seen Mask of the Phantasm when you rewatched it again in preparation for this episode?
I haven't seen it in years, but it has aged really well.
I agree. I hadn't seen it in a long time either. And it's funny because when I started watching it, I started automatically quoting in my head and repeating and saying the lines out loud with the characters because it started coming back to me because I'd seen it so many times after it came out initially. Um, that yeah, it all came back to me, man. Mask of the Phantasm, released in '93. My God, has it been that long? The answer is yes. It's a classic, man. I'll hit you with this. We haven't even dove into this story yet. Haven't even dove into the characters, the situation. Not even the primary character, or the villain, the villainess. Spoiler alert. What do you think? Have you ever thought about Mask of the Phantasm becoming a live action take? And do you think it'd be worth their time to do that, or should they just leave it alone?
I kind of think they should leave it alone. I wouldn't mind seeing like a another adaptation of it, or to see the Phantasm character show up in a live action movie. But to just completely redo this movie, I don't know if they could do it justice because there's just so much nostalgia around it. Like I mean, the first thing I noticed when I cut it on today and I started watching it is I always forget just how great the opening sequence of it is, and like the version of the animated theme that they use for the movie is just so great. It's just so good. It's just every time I watch it, it feels like to take like a reference straight from the animated series. It feels like Bruce like sitting up close to the TV watching Grey Ghost. It just feels like you're a kid again. It just feels like I was a
Yes.
kid and watching it at the drive-in the first time I've seen it.
Oh man, I haven't been to a drive-in in years. I take that back. I take that back. The wife and I went to a drive-in and caught a double feature. Oh God, what was it? It was the Will Ferrell flick with Kevin Hart. Um, there was a double feature of that and one of,
Get Hard, is that the name of that
I
movie?
think so. Yeah. It was that and I forget what the other film was. And I remember this suddenly because I had the worst pounding headache on the planet. That headache that's so bad, one of your eyes is closed. It's that bad. Like, dude, killing me. And I'm like, thank God I'm not in a cramped movie theater. I'd be beside myself right now. At least in the car, I could lay my seat back and try to relax. But yeah, I love the drive-ins, man. That's a whole different show for another time. But God, I love the atmosphere. I love being able to just sit back and oh, that's good stuff. Good times, kids. If you've never been to a drive-through, everyone's been to a drive-through. If you've never been to a drive-in, man, are you missing out? Um, I'm like you, dude. I immediately started remembering back, and it just felt so good to watch this again. Um, we did the Batman episode, and we've also done Batman Year One. At some point, will be released, obviously, but I think we referenced Mask of the Phantasm on both episodes. What is it about this film as we get started? What is it that separates this for you from the animated series first? And also, what separates it from the other depictions of Batman we've seen in live action thus far?
I think what immediately separates it from the animated series is just how serious it feels like the movie is taken. Let's say even the opening credits, just the choir version of the theme is just so cool. Um, a lot of the themes are more serious. Like I remember seeing it as a kid and going, and well, no, I it took me a while to notice this because I didn't notice it when I was a kid. I saw it other times in high school, and I was like, wait, Batman had sex.
Right.
Like they don't illicitly point it out, but yeah, he had sex, and there's Like there's very violent scenes in this movie. It's not over the top violent, but there's blood.
Yes, there is. Yeah, you're right. That
So
did hit me. Yeah.
so it was in that on that note alone, it was very different from the animated series. They wouldn't have been able to get away with some of the same stuff on Fox for like a 25-minute episode of the animated series.
Right.
um, but I think the thing that always separated it for me from the live action takes we've seen is I feel like the live action takes are good, but I feel like they all try to steer away from some of the more kooky stuff about comic books or even just the Joker itself. Like I feel like the Joker in this is just the Joker. It doesn't feel like, we have to have this grounded take on the Joker or this ultra serious interpretation of him. He uses laughing gas. He uses all the same props. He tells all of the goofy dad like jokes, um, and it works. And I feel like that's what makes Joker special. I feel like there are a lot of things about Batman that is, inherently fantastical that needs to stay that way. It doesn't need to be grounded.
Because if the Joker is grounded, then it's like watching Walking Dead where there's no hope ever and everyone's going to die anyway, so who cares? But if the Joker is, like you said, fantastical, he's more off the cuff, joy buzzers instead of razor blades. I mean, that at least brings some comedy to it, even though he's a cold blooded killer. But it's not quite as dark and twisted as the stuff we've seen.
Yeah,
So
I agree. I feel like that, there's a way that you can still do dark. But again, when we watch this stuff growing up, and again, the reason why when I watch it and I was sitting close to the TV watching Mask of the Phantasm today, it just, I just don't feel like you always get that kind of you don't get that experience watching other stuff because it's beating you over the head with like, no, this is for adults. This isn't for kids. We are trying to reach other audiences. It's like you don't always have to do that. And I've said a lot that I feel like the reason why Spider-Man 2 is such a good comic book movie and it has stood the test of time is because it doesn't try to do that. It tries to tell its story, but it leans into the camp as well.
yeah, it's unapologetically what it is. It's not trying to cater to anybody. Like you said, it's just telling its story. I mean, a part. I don't want it to be hey, let's rail on DC because why not? But we've talked about it multiple times here on the 6M before about how the people they hand the DC Extended Universe to just are, Zack Snyder, namely, just this idea of we've, like you said, got to make it real, got to make it gritty, got to get some blood, got to get some sex, got to get some great stuff happening, bash their heads, shoot them all. I mean, in the process of trying to make it real, they're losing the spark of what made it special to begin with, haven't they?
Yeah, I think some things it's okay to give it the same, magic and that same, sheen that we had when we watched it as a kid. It doesn't all need to be reality because I mean, we see reality every day. You can turn on the TV and see like dark and gritty stuff every day. um, there should still
Yeah.
be some level of escapism to these things. And that's one of those things where, not to poke at just the DC movies, but look at the Transformer movies. Like the fact that they try to make it as just like, look, we got to sexualize it as much as possible. We got to make the robots into these big, ultra realistic robots. They can't look cartoonish at all. They can't be bright colors. Everything has to be gray, gray, gray. And it's like, I don't know, man. It's just like those things are fine, but when I watched Transformers as a kid, I wasn't looking at it to go, "Oh, I can believe that these robots are real." Like, no, you don't it doesn't have to feel real.
Oh, don't get me started on that. I'm a major 80s Transformers kid. That was my jam. I've got the whole series. And yeah, it's a crime what they've done. Michael Bay in particular, what he's done to that franchise, man. Like, God, don't even get me started. But yeah, you can't do you during the transforming scenes. I can't even tell what's happening. You can't even make it out.
Yeah, just a bunch of jumbled up mess of wires and all of this stuff happening at once. It's just like sensory overload.
Yeah. And I had such high hopes for the Bumblebee flick, and it was good, better than what I've seen. And then in the end, Bumblebee just had to turn into a Camaro, didn't he? They just couldn't help themselves. Ah, I see. This was a prequel the whole time. Wonderful.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
yeah. I mean, it's to be expected. And I mean, I'm saying this as somebody that liked the first Transformers movie, but I just feel like the there are just because what makes that stand out is sometimes I think about these things and I'm like, yeah, if a kid goes to see this and it's like, yeah, but not everything is for kids, and I'm like, it's a Transformers movie. If it's not for kids, who is it for?
right. Well put. Well put. I made the comment in a podcast setting with other podcasters, and somebody kind of knows my stance on working blue, as they say, kids. And he cursed, and he immediately tried to apologize to me personally. I said, dude, I said, I curse. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I said, but when I do shows, I'd like to sound more professional. I want to sound like a man, not a foul mouthed teenager, which is what I maybe sound like in everyday life. I don't know, I guess. But and I made a comment. I said, if a guy's listening to my show on speaker and his kid walks in the room, he doesn't have to pause it. He doesn't have to say, "Oh, earmuffs," because I'm not saying anything outlandish. I'm not cursing. I'm not talking negatively about women or anything like that. Like again, you got to know who. I don't know. Got to know who your audience is. Number one. Number two, if you want your stuff to be out there, obviously you want to make it to it so it appeals to the masses. There's limitations to that, of course, and depending on the content. But if you're talking about Batman, like you said earlier, we have this idea. Well, Batman, he's dark, right? He's in alleys and stuff, and we got to make him uber realistic. You don't really. I
Yeah,
mean, people to this, we talked about the Batman show on TV, and people go, ha ha ha, dude. Are, when's the last time you talked about the Schumacher Batman films? When's the last time you had a conversation about it versus the last time you talked about the Adam West TV show? People remember it because they loved it, because it was for kids, it was silly, it was childish, but people will never forget it. We've done everything in our power to forget the Schumacher Batman films because they were horrible. Like,
yeah, and that's why look, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting, in some way, wanting things to um be sophisticated enough that we can still enjoy them. And I feel like this movie tackles things in an interesting way. There are dark tones to it, there are adult tones to it, and they handle it well. But not everything needs to grow up with us. Because if everything grows up with us, then how do you bring in new fans?
excellent point. Excellent point. That's very well said. The voice cast on this sucker. I mean, if you don't feel Kevin Conroy as Batman, you got a hole in your soul because this is Conroy in his prime. Voice not weathered over the years, pitch perfect. I swear Batman and Bruce Wayne sound like two different people when he does the voice. I swear to God it does. I defy anyone to tell me I'm wrong. He's amazing, obviously. We could spend the next 30 minutes talking about how great he is, but we have to at least acknowledge the guy that his voice work on this character. I mean, he will never get enough credit, in my opinion, on what he's brought to the Batman mythos. And this is Conroy at his best in Mask of the Phantasm.
Yeah, I feel like because this is a feature length movie, and they do cover some more adult themes and some more serious tones. Um, this is he gets to do some actual acting in this thing. He gets to do some legitimate acting, and he's great. Um, but just in terms of what he does with the voice for Bruce Wayne and Batman, there was a long time where I read Batman comics and I would read it in the Conroy voice,
Yes.
because that was the voice I knew growing up.
Man, I did the same thing. I remember doing the same thing with Wolverine and trying to do the "Hey, bub" long before Hugh Jackman ever came along, and trying to in my head imagine what that would sound like. Yeah, I did the same thing. He's as I said, he's great. As equally as great though is his nemesis, Mark Hamill, who you know, found a whole other life apart from Luke Skywalker. I mean, and he'll always be known as Luke Skywalker, but he will also be known as a voice actor because of the Joker. I mean, the Joker, I think, had one of his best, I don't want to say runs, but his best appearance in a Batman property in this film. I thought the writing was amazing. His dialogue is great. Hamill is legendary. I can't say enough good things about him. This is the kind of Joker I wish we would see in live action. This kooky, zany, but dangerous guy. I don't know why we won't get him. It's a shame that we won't. But Mark Hamill as the Joker in this film is 5-star.
Yeah, I feel like the closest we've gotten to that Joker is probably Jack Nicholson. But now everybody is trying to do, the Arkham Asylum version, or do the Morrison version, or just everybody has to give you all of the over the top psychobabble. It's like, all right, man. It's sometimes it's good. That's not a knock at Heath Ledger's Joker. I enjoy his Joker. Um, but sometimes it's just a little bit too much. Sometimes the thing that makes Joker great is that he's unrealistic. When you try to make him too much of a believable character, as the movie tried to make him, being the Tom Phillips movie, I'm not really into that.
Yeah, I agree.
But no, Mark Hamill's great. He does such great changes in tone. He'll go from being very zany into this very intimidating and you know almost scary voice at times. It's great. I think one of the best things he does it in is when he goes and actually the first time we see him in the movie, and the mobster is like talking to him, and he was like, "Man, if he kills me, he's gonna come for you next." And he gets mad, and he picks him up, and he's like, "Don't touch me!" And then he goes back, "I don't know where you've been."
Yeah, it's great. Oh my god. Yeah, and when he's hitting on the electronic maid that's like, or the housewife that's cutting, act like she's cutting at the kitchen counter, like he's gonna have sex with her that night. That is the best stuff.
I, I laugh at it every time I see this movie, but when he's fighting with Andrea, and he's trying to reach back to grab something, you think he's trying to grab this knife behind him, and he picks up this big bologna and hits her with it. It is hilarious every time I see it.
Oh God, I'm with you. I'm like, again, nothing against Joaquin Phoenix or Jared Leto for that matter, but yeah, this is the Joker I want. I don't know. I don't know who you get. I don't know who you get. Dude, I'm gonna be straight with you. And this I don't know if this is a weird take or not. God, dude, just paint Mark Hamill. I don't there's a way to do it. I don't know if he's ever done anything like for a spoof like in Joker costume. I would love to see it. He doesn't necessarily have to be 6'3" and 110 pounds. He can be what he is now, can he?
Well, I mean, he's done versions that are not Joker, but they're basically like parodies of Joker. He did it for the Jay and Silent Bob movie.
Yes, he did.
Was in it for a minute. He played
He
prankster
was
in
cock
the
knocker.
Flash movie.
Yeah.
Cockknocker,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, but he did the prankster character for the Flash TV show.
He did.
So he's done live action versions, but man, there's just so many iconic things he's done for the animated universe as Joker. I still don't think any Batman and Joker back and forth can top the monologue they have in the Batman Beyond movie, where he's sitting behind that he's sitting behind that he's showing in the film of what he did to Tim Drake, and then afterwards he explains everything, and he tells him he knows his identity, and it's just so good how he delivers the lines. He's like, man, all this time you've just been a rich kid crying for mommy and daddy, and it would be funny. He was like, yeah, and it would be funny if it wasn't so sad. And then he just sits there for a minute, and he was like, no, I'm gonna laugh anyway.
Yeah. It's classic. It's great. Yeah, dude. Now you got me wanting a Joker film. That's this guy. Um, how much of this, what we're laughing about, reminiscing about, how much of this is working because of Hamill, because of his inflection, because of his tone, his delivery? How much of this do we remember if it's another voice actor doing the work?
I don't think it's nearly as good without Mark Hamill. I don't think the animated series is revered the way it is without Conroy and some of the other voice actors that came in for this thing.
Hmm. What a phenomenal pairing! What a phenomenal pairing, Conroy and Hamill. There's two names you don't. You mention those two names to a fanboy, they're going to know exactly what you're talking about. But you know, it's not. It doesn't pack the same punch as Affleck and Damon. It just doesn't, because the world at large maybe not know what you're talking about, but it should, because Conroy and Hamill are magic together. And I don't know that during the years for the recording sessions for that show, if they were ever in the same room, the same booth, or if it was all isolated recordings. But I'd be interested to see how that went down. But man, yeah, just great stuff here from both guys. Dana Delaney as Andrea Beaumont, and it seems like Dana Delaney has looked the exact same for like 30 years. I don't think she's aged a day. If you're a Tombstone fan, she was Josephine in Tombstone, which is one of my favorite flicks of all time. I freaking love that movie. I'll do a 6M on it one of these days. She's great. She is the right amount of innocent, but the right amount of strength at the same time, which is a lot of the times the roles that she will get. And there's a reason she gets them and hits them out of the park, because she's that good. And, we've talked here on the show, Phil, before about just because you're a good actor doesn't necessarily mean you're a good voice actor. It's a whole different thing. What do you think about her job here in this film?
Yeah, I think she does. I think she does a great job of, um, again, adding to this movie and making it feel like a movie. Like it just feels like she feels like a character that is exclusive to the movie. It doesn't feel like, she came in and did like a guest spot on the animated series. Like I don't know how else to say it, but it feels like when she comes in and it's like, oh, this is like there's some reverence here. Like there's some expense paid to have like a a well known actress come in.
Mm, yeah, good call. She fits right in, doesn't she? It feels like she's holding her own next to Conroy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Um, and of course, Dana Delaney is playing Andrea Beaumont, kids. And also, spoiler alert, the Phantasm. Hart Bachner, who I know very little about as Arthur Reeves, is the right amount of slimy and, ambitious, willing to do anything to get a leg up. And we see that he does that. Uh, just, dude, the first time you saw this, if you can go back that far, did you have it in your head at any point where you're trying to figure out who the Phantasm is? Because my money was on this guy very, very early on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they kind of point you to him because it seems pretty clear that he's railing so hard against Batman. It's like, okay, what does this guy know? Is he framing him? What's his deal?
Yeah, yeah. Um, but again, the way he's drawn, his facial expressions are great. The way he looks sideways at you, he just got a face you don't trust. He just looks like a con man. I think it's perfect. And then later on, when he gets the laughing gas and he can't stop, and Batman's coming into his room, he's like, "Oh no!" And he's trying to be scared, but he's laughing at the same time. Dude, that was a great moment, man. I love that bit.
It reminds me of one of my favorite Simpsons bits when Bart is on a roof and he gets ready to fall off the roof and he grabs it on at the last minute. And there's like a caterpillar that starts crawling over his finger and he starts laughing. He's like, I'm gonna die.
Uh, that's great. Yeah.
But no, I feel like the animated series did such a great job of drawing characters and, you know, they'd always draw like the good guys with very strong chins and
Mm.
like very upright, and like you'd see all of the bad guys, or most of the bad guys that would be very slender and very slimy and snake looking. Just like Joker. Like
Yes.
Joker has very pointed features,
Mm-hmm. His
and it's the same
nose, his
thing with
chin. Yeah.
it's the same thing with Reeves' character. He's got very pointed and very sleek features, and it makes him look even more like, what's this guy deal? I don't know if I could trust this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. But absolutely. Good work here in this role. It did what it was supposed to do, and I enjoyed the character. It was comic relief, whether he was supposed to be or not. I got a chuckle here and there. Stacy Keach is a legend, and you talked about let's shell out some money for a respectable name. Stacy Keach is Carl Beaumont. Stacy Keach, of course, kids, if you're a veteran, you know this is Mike Hammer. So yeah, this guy, great voice for just about anything, whether it's animation or whatnot. Just a great voice, great presence. He has presence through this old vocal performance. It's not out of the realm of possibility for this to happen, right? But it is interesting how there's a few different folks in here who maybe didn't do that much voice acting leading up to this, but who nailed it. And I really thought Stacy Keach as Carl Beaumont was great.
Yeah, I agree. He's another one where he has like some of the strong features, but you look at him, he's got like just the right amount of he's got just the right amount of suaveness to him. That's like, what's this guy up to?
Yes, little little shifty. He's shifty. Um,
Very shifty. He's got like the very pointed mustache.
yes. Anybody with a pointy mustache, a thin mustache, you can't trust that guy. No hero looks like that. You know, like except Zorro, maybe. You know. Tom Clark 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M podcast sent you. So, Abe Vigoda. Now, I don't know if you have any background with Abe Vigoda there, Phil, but I grew up late 70s, early 80s was my era. 80s was my era, right? I grew up on Abe Vigoda as Fish in Barney Miller. My mom watched every episode of that show. So because of that, I watched every episode with her. And Abe Vigoda had, much in the same way that Betty White had, he had a presence. He had a way about him. He immediately chewed up the scenery when he was on screen because he had a kind face and he was funny, easygoing, and he's just never felt like he was acting. He just felt like a normal guy who was playing a part or just playing himself. And that to take that and twist it and turn it on its ear. I mean, you know, not for nothing, Abe Vigoda was in The Godfather. He was Salvatore in The Godfather, right? But not for nothing here to take that and twist it and make him a villain. The voice is great, and it works. I just wonder. I don't want to say miscast. I don't even want to say he's miscast. I wonder would it have been different had he been Carl Beaumont? Because his voice is so trusting. It's so at home. At least that's how it hits my ears. Again, not saying he's miscast, but what did you think of Abe Vigoda as Sal Valestra?
Um, yeah, I thought he was great. I thought all the wheezing and coughing and I thought he was great. I guess I don't have all of the same background with the actor, so it didn't really bother me.
Right.
But I thought he was great.
Yeah, I was jaded a little bit. By if you ever get a chance to look him up, it's fun. I don't know if the Barney Miller show, I don't know if it ages well or not. I have no idea. I'm gonna have to go back and look it up sometime. It may be like, wow, this is not good. I don't know. It was a hit for its time for sure. Number one show on TV for a while, I think. Um, Dick Miller as Chucky Soul, and Phil, if you don't know who Dick Miller is, I'll bet if you saw his picture, you would, because you could say, I've seen that guy before, because he's been in a lot of stuff over the years. Um, Chucky Soul didn't have a massive part here. And we'll run down the heavies here in a row. John P. Ryan as Buzz Bronski. And it just cracked me up because every time the Phantasm said, Mr. Bronski, it just made me laugh. I don't know why. There's something about it that's hilarious to me. Um, so there's your heavies. And it should be noted that Stacy Keach, I think, also does the voice of the Phantasm in this film, I believe.
Hmm.
Yeah. Another way they're trying to get you to believe that it's Andrea's father, who is actually um, the villain in the film. So there you go. Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. as Alfred Pennyworth. Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. is an American actor, and he's another guy I kind of had a connection with because I've seen him in a bunch of stuff over the years when I was growing up and whatnot. He's not English, but he did Alfred's voice through the whole animated series, I believe. So he's great. He never not sounds British to me. Of course, that's after hearing him multiple episodes, and that becomes your Alfred after a while. But he's great here. There was the great scene that when Bruce puts on the mask for the first time and turns around, he says, "My God, that's great stuff." Um, what do you think about this take of Alfred in the Batman universe?
Um, yeah, I don't know. I really like Alfred here because I mean I know that they've tried to expand the Alfred character outside of the animated show. In comics, they've had like an entire like prequel show based on him, and some people do like the whole backstory where he was MI agent and all this other stuff. And I feel like they keep it simple with Alfred in animated universe here, and I've always enjoyed that. It's
Mm.
just like, no, he's just a butler. He's here to do his duty, and it's not like he's doing his duty because, oh well, I was a hero somewhere else. No, I'm doing my duty to this man that I've known his entire life, and so because he's going to risk his life to do this, I am going to take care of him. I'm going to be by his side.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I like that. You're right. They have complicated it. Have you ever watched Pennyworth, by the way?
I haven't.
I've not given it a shot. I don't know how it would be. I've not necessarily heard anything bad, but I have never heard anyone say, "Oh, dude, you got to watch this show." So I may give it a chance one of these days. Um, the late Bob Hastings is Commissioner James Gordon. Um, of course, Bob is no longer with us. His credits go all the way back to McHale's Navy. So he was working in Hollywood for a good long time. And his voice as Commissioner Gordon, I think, is just as iconic as the other voice actors on the animated series. I think he was great in the role.
Yeah, I really like him. When I think Commissioner Gordon, I do kind of think that voice. It's either him or just for some reason just Commissioner Gordon from the '60s show.
Oh, yeah. I used to know that actor's name. I can't remember his name now. He was sort of borderline English, wasn't he? Like very
Yeah.
proper.
Yes.
Yeah. Gosh, man, I haven't. We were just talking about the show, and I was like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that voice. Yeah. Um. Well, there you have it, kids. The only one that we did not mention is Harvey Bullock. Uh, Harvey Bullock, and I don't know the background on the Bullock character because I've never really done a deep dive on it before. But I always assumed that the Bullock character was based on the character from Year One, Batman Year One, Flass. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know, but it seems like it.
it makes sense. Robert Costanzo, and apparently, well, yeah, a career over 40 years, kids, and often got casted as a crook or a cop, or yeah, dude, another guy. If you saw his face, you would know him. You say, "Oh, I've seen him in something before." So there you go.
Yeah,
There's the voice cast.
Harvey always has the toothpick in his mouth, and he always looks like he's like grimacing at you.
Yeah, his hair's always messed up, even under the fedora, and his tie's always crooked, and his fedora is a trench coat's a mess. So remind me about Batman Begins. Was that Bullock that we saw, or was that another cop?
Yeah, that's a good
I
question. I
can't
don't
remember.
think it's Bullock. I can't remember his name in the movie, but I don't think it's Harvey Bullock.
Yeah. I kept thinking, why are they
Ah,
not just going to do Bullock on TV or something? What's going on?
but he looks like him. He has like the same like mannerism. He has the same like disheveled look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. You're talking about the guy that um
Yeah.
he's
He's eating
hemmed
the
up in the
sandwich in the
rain.
back alley, I think.
And he's like, "Come on, I have kids.
Yeah.
Feed a falafel."
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'm also reminded of Eckhart from the '89 Batman film, who was as crooked as the day is long. And I'm like, well, now this is before the animated series, but looking back on, I'm like, I wonder if they took the inspiration for Bullock from this guy. Because remember, Joker shot Eckhart in the '89 Batman film because he was slimy, man. So
Yeah, yeah. Maybe he's like an amalgamation of a bunch of different characters. I don't know.
could be, could be. Either way, crooked cops. Who would have thunk it? Uh, yeah. He, you kind of feel like the Bullock character at times is comic relief because he's such a dunderhead, and he should be. That should be how he's portrayed, which I think he's portrayed pitch perfect in this film. Um, let's talk about the story. I think one of the questions I typically always hit you with is in terms of the villain's plan. You knew this was coming, right? In terms of the villain's overall plan, are you good with the plan, or are there holes in it? Does it make sense to you? What works for you? What works for you about Andrea's plan to get even, and what maybe doesn't work for you?
Um, yeah, it seems like her plan is to frame her dad. Um, but it also seems like she's inadvertently framing Batman. But then again, she doesn't know that Reeves is running the propaganda against him. So it's I don't know. It's weird. It's like I almost wonder like what would she have done if she got away with all of it.
Yeah, good point. They did kind of feel like they left it open at the end for something else to happen.
Yeah, I will say that the thing that always kind of makes it funny to me is that Joker is just in the middle of everything. It almost feels like it's arbitrary, but it's like it's a Batman movie. Of course, in some way, it has to involve Joker.
Yeah, it's funny because like he would have been he wouldn't have even have known anything about it had she not come after him. Had she just been doing this and left him out of it, I mean, would he have put two and two together? I guess he does explain at one point that he figured out what was going on without her even coming after him yet. So he already knew, which
Yeah,
I guess makes sense.
yeah. I love that Joker figures it out before Batman, and it's something about that phone call where he calls him. He's like, like, hey, Toots, don't try and jump out of window this time.
Yeah. Cause then Bruce knows he's not talking to him.
Right.
If he had left out the Toots line, he wouldn't have known that he was talking about Andrea. So
Yeah.
that's a nice touch. We got to talk about the smoke. First off, let's talk about character design. How do you think about how the Phantasm looks? It's very simplistic because it's animated, right? But what do you think about the suit, about the face, the smoke, all that stuff?
Um, I really like that they do this very stylized look for the animated series where it almost looks like a lot of the like serial stuff from like pulp comics.
Yeah.
I've always liked those designs, and so I thought the Phantasm was always a good character design. Um, it's like they did like a mix of the character from Batman Year Two, and
Yeah.
yeah, the design they use is way better than that.
They had a.
Because it,
Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say because he has like the same scythe on his hand as the Reaper character from Batman Year Two, but the Reaper character is also like he has like a skull for a mask or something like that. And I just think like the hooded look and the mask they use for this is much better.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, Yeah, I 100% agree. The smoke. This is some very, as we like to call it here on the 6M, comic book science. Um, this smoke's some magical smoke there, Phil. Because as soon as this smoke happens, she's gone, and like
Yeah.
there's no trace of her. Did they never explained any of that? Did they?
Yeah, she's using like the Mysterio smoke. Like it just kind of works to her for whatever she needs it for. If she needs to disappear, the smoke works. If she needs it as like a distraction, that's where the smoke somehow kind of gets stuck on you. You can't get it off. It works.
Right.
Um, yeah, it's very Mysterio esque.
Yeah, good call. Like it's like Nightcrawler when he bamps in and out of a room. Like it's yeah, maybe she's teleporting. Maybe that's what's happening. She's I don't know. I'm okay with it. It's an animated film. It doesn't have to be, as we said earlier, this doesn't have to be real life. It's an animated superhero film. So it's okay that there's comic book science in it. No one's gonna be upset about it.
Yeah, it is very much like either Mysterio esque or Scooby Doo esque, where it's like, oh yeah, the villain was using this to make the smoke, and that's how. And it's like, wait, that doesn't really explain it. Like, oh yeah, he was using like dry ice all this time. All right, but how did the smoke move and stuff with him if it's just dry ice?
Exactly. um, have you seen the College Humor stuff where Batman will like try to do that disappearing thing and they turn back around and he's like hiding behind the chimney on the roof, like trying to not be seen? It's like, I can see you, you're right there.
I haven't, but that sounds really funny.
Oh, it's so good. They're making a lot of the whole you turn and then you turn back and he's gone. But like he's really not gone. He's just on a corner of the roof hiding from you so you won't see him. Oh, it's good stuff. Uh so yeah, I'm okay with the design. As far as the plan goes, I do think there's some flaws because as you said, she unintentionally is getting uh it's getting pinned on Bruce, whether she realizes it or not. And plus, we know that her father was killed, right? Um, by Joker. But she's making out to Bruce like she's trying to, because he doesn't know that he's dead. So she's essentially lying to him the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, the people of Gotham don't know that he's dead.
Right.
They just think he disappeared.
Right. Um, one thing that this movie does, and there's several things, but one thing this movie does, and to me, this is the driving plot of this film. The driving narrative of this film is Bruce Wayne, for the first time, could be happy. And he's found someone, and there's that scene where he's speaking at the gravesite. It's like, I didn't know it could be this way. I didn't expect to be happy, that kind of thing. This is such good stuff. Dude, why have they never approached this in a film, you think? They don't want him to look weak. They don't want to go down that road. Why have they never went this direction with him?
Um, I mean, they kind of did with the relationship with Rachel Dawson. I don't think it's nearly as good. Um, I just think there's certain scenes that make you believe that he was actually going to stop what he was doing. Um, like I think that scene where she sees him try and take on those bikers and he almost gets hurt. Which, by the way, him watching it now and watching him run up a motorcycle and punch a guy in the face and land perfectly and then turn around and just eat a bat to the stomach. It's like, wait a minute, you did all of this perfectly, like jumped up the motorcycle and hit this guy perfectly and landed perfectly, but it's just like, oh no, this guy's behind me with this bat.
Right. Yeah. Whew. More that's what we like to refer to as comic book athletics there, where you can just jump a motorcycle but then not see the guy behind you. It's kind of how that works. So no
Yeah,
spider sense, Phil. He doesn't have a bat sense. He's a bat, doesn't have the radar. That's the downfall.
I mean, he doesn't have the bat suit on, so he can turn his neck. He can see.
Right.
Uh, Uh, but yeah, I think the way that they did the scenes, like when they first meet at the grave, and then how they tie it back to the graves later, um, and then just like their whole romance and him actually proposing. Um, I thought it was all really well done, all the way to the he gets the box back and it has the letter with the "I can't, I'm too young."
Hmm.
It's all handled really really well. And it just goes into this theme with Bruce Wayne where everything around his character is it just seems like because of his upbringing and this one traumatic event, it just everything in his life is supposed to be there's no happy ending. There's no happy ending to his life. Um, and I think you could actually believe he's going to get this happy ending, and then we see, as like with everything in Gotham finds a way to taint everyone.
Oh my God, big time. Andrea makes a massive heel turn. Does it for the right reasons, doesn't see herself as the heel, as the best villains in literature always do. Never sees herself as the villain. Um, yeah, feels that she's justified. Yeah, all right, so you want to get real world, kids? Let's get real world for a second. If Bruce Wayne's a real guy, this notion of no, no, you promised them, you made an oath that you would do this. There's no backing out. The universe will right itself if you attempt to change course. If you try to stop it now, something's going to go wrong where you won't get to be happy, which is exactly what it looks like happens in this film. But in the real world, that's not life. That's not facts. That is perceived to be facts. I mean, the character of Bruce Wayne in this particular corner of the universe, this retelling of his origin, could have been happy, could have decided, you know what, I'm going after her. I'm going to find her. I'm the richest guy in town. I've got means. I'll find her. I'll stop her at the airport. I'll go with her with my hat in my hand and say, please just tell me what's wrong. Can I help? Can I do something? But instead, he stayed because the mission was pulling him back. I mean, dude, it's amazing when you look at. And had we ever got a take on Batman where we had the opportunity to see, well, this didn't have to happen. He didn't have to become Bruce or Batman and be tortured for the rest of his life. He could have been happy. I'm sure there was a comic at some point, but I don't recall it up to this movie. I mean, have you read anything like this before?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had stories where he wanted to quit, or it went into the obsession with the mission and why he chose to not pick a happy ending over his duty. Yeah, I'm trying to think of specific things, but I feel like this was the best depiction of that we've seen. Um, yeah, there's just so many good things they do with this movie, and I think him having that breakdown at his parents' grave where he's like, just let me have this, let me go. Like I didn't think I could be happy,
Yeah, that's great.
and it's just like the way that they frame it with just like the lightning keeps flashing over the Wayne name, and it has like those big sound, like the synths come up every time, and it's really good. I think they handle it really well, and then Andrea comes to the grave and says, maybe they're already telling me you can,
Oh, it's great.
maybe
What a
they
great
sent
line.
me. And it's like, oh, and for that brief second, you could believe he could be happy. And yeah, he proposes there. And man, I, even as a kid, I remember just how heartbreaking it was when he got the note and he read it and he was like, and he just looked off into the different distance, like, I can't, I know that I can't. And I know what you're saying, that any actual adult that has the means that he has wouldn't have given up like that. But I think the whole point of this movie is shows just how mentally damaged Batman is.
Mm.
It's just kind of like the same that when we talked about Ray and how I said I didn't realize how much this is a depiction of a man with severe depression. It's the same watching this movie. It's kind of like, no, this is a man with depression that thinks that he's convinced himself that there is no happy ending for him. And so because he's convinced himself of that, it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the second something it goes wrong, it's like he does what he would usually do. He's a paradox in the sense that he has faith that people can be better. But the second someone lets him down, it's more, proof that he's doing what he should be doing.
Plus, there's the fact that he didn't develop like a normal kid with two parents would.
I mean, look at his proposal. He just gave her the box, and he was like, this is a millionaire playboy," and that was his proposal. Like, you figure it out, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because he never had, I mean, he had Alfred, but we're always led to believe that's all he had. And there was, who's the female character in the books that was like a social worker in Crime Alley?
Oh, Dr. Leslie Tompkins.
That's it. That's it. So, at least in the books, there's a female presence, but
Yeah, she's in an animated series as well,
she
right?
is. I forgot about that. Yeah. They just don't
Um,
mention her here.
but yeah, he doesn't know how to express himself well, and it shows several times in this movie.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that he falls so hard for her because he hadn't experienced anything like that. He hadn't experienced anything outside of you know, the love with his parents and like their relationship. And so I think he believed, I mean, even when she came back and she saved him later in the movie, he was ready to give up again. He was ready to give everything up again for her.
Yeah. It's funny because when she came back in the picture and he's speaking to her as Batman in that voice, in this guy that he's become, that he's been for, how remind me, do they explain how many years have passed?
No, I don't think they do.
I mean, I don't know how many we're talking. Let's say it's 10 or whatever. I mean, this is not the
I mean,
same guy she left behind,
he looks a lot younger. Like he looks a little skinnier. He looks younger in the early flashbacks.
And you can tell there's an attempt made to young his voice up, at least by
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
Um yes, I don't think it's one of those things where it's like maybe a year or two. I think it's like some time has passed.
Yeah, for
Um
sure.
but yeah, man, I think that's such a great thing too when he shows up in her when he shows up at her house and she makes sure to kiss Reeves to make him jealous.
Right.
And, and then they go on a talk and he's like trying to intimidate her and she's just like not biting at all. She's like, no, this is Bruce behind a mask. And she's just like she gives him the great line at the end of he goes, he was like, you lied. And he's like, then she goes, if anybody in this room is being controlled by his parents, it's you.
Oh, it's great. It's a great line because it's 100% true. Whether he will admit it or not, it's 100% true. Have a product or a service that you want to get out into the world? Always wanted to try your hand at podcasting but don't know where to start? We've got you covered. Pod for Hire is a podcast production company that offers turnkey services to fit your needs. We produce your show from start to finish, allowing you the valuable time you require to focus on your established clients as well as prospective clients. We pride ourselves on delivering a top-notch product that will set your business apart from the rest and give your company the exposure it deserves. For more information, give us a call at 1-828-800-9880 or email us at info@podforhire.com. Pod for Hire. We take the work out of podcasting. Like, he has the best of intentions. Man, we could do a whole deep dive on just the psychology of Batman. Uh, he has the best of intentions. His heart's in the right place. He's got a mission. He's ambitious. He's driven. But any good therapist worth their weight will tell you this is a problem if you make it a problem. If you tell yourself this is a problem, you're right. So he has convinced himself, I'm the only one that can do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. I got to be this thing. I got to fight this. I got to go out there every night. I have to do this. I got to drive the car. I got to rappel down buildings. I have to do this. And this is what I was supposed to be doing. that's what you're telling yourself. That doesn't mean that's the case. That doesn't mean you have to do anything. You're not appointed. It's not a job. You didn't get hired. You weren't born with powers. This is not, with great power comes great responsibility. You are choosing to put yourself in the line of fire. Again, man, the psychological side of this guy, Phil, I think that's why people tend to try to make this stuff realistic and ground it in reality, because they see the psychosis in Bruce Wayne and they want to dig into that instead of just letting it
Yeah.
be for kids.
And all of that stuff is entertaining. All of that stuff is interesting. You can do it in a compelling way and still give it the trappings of, an animated series or something else that is meant for not just adults.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that here. Man, one of the things that you notice psychosis wise, I didn't pick this up until I watched it recently. But before he starts putting on the suit and he's going out with the ski mask and he in the dark clothes and he's trying to stop guys. Um, I don't know if you noticed this, but like when he tries to stop those guys, he like jumps out from behind the truck and he goes Kia,
Yes.
and he's like, it's like he's like this over the top like adventurer. He's like happy go lucky. And it's everything you would think Batman is not, and they're like not afraid of him at all. And he's just like, it's something's off, and it almost feels like to still a Five Heartbeats reference. When Duck does the does the speech towards the end, and he's like, "Man, Donald Duck is going to become a better writer when he undergoes some real pain." And I would argue that Andrea leaving him and him being reminded that nothing is promised and you cannot put your faith in people because people leave. That was the thing that made him Batman.
Yeah. Yeah. That's deep. Man, there's so much good stuff here. I mean, you're right. You're right. It can be entertaining. It can be interesting to go down. It's just, I guess the deeper you dive, the more you can get lost, right? I mean, maybe that's what we're saying. Like you can dive deep all day long on this stuff, but you run the risk of, it's like getting caught on YouTube and going down the wormhole of a video that leads to 20 videos in a row about a topic. And then next thing you know, it's 3 a.m. You're like, oh my God, where'd the time go? Yeah. When all you did was click to watch a trailer or something, but you can't help yourself.
I feel like you can always, go along the edge of adult stuff. There's so many things they hint in here, but they don't outright say it. Like I said, they don't tell us that him and Andrea have sex, but you could assume after the fact.
Yeah, no kidding. That wasn't lost on me either. Whether the first time I saw it or the time I rewatched it for this either. I mean, it's like, oh yeah, they did, enjoy each other's company for an evening. All right. So
Yeah, she comes out. She comes out later in the scene afterwards, wearing his shirt, and she's standing outside. And they don't say it, but it's like, yeah, pretty much.
kind of unrelated, but have you checked out the new Masters of the Universe show on Netflix?
I haven't.
Ooh. I'm a Kevin Smith guy, kids. You probably already know that. I had no problem with the first season. Before I guess it's still season one, but then they took a break and it came back with the last half. But the last half, there's a scene in which Evil Lynn attempts to seduce Skeletor, and when I tell you seduce, I'm talking about, dude. You'd have to see this to believe it. And I'm thinking, how far are they going to take this? Oh my God, they're going to take it that far. So it's not as graphic as I'm making out. It's not graphic. But to see these characters that you kind of grew up watching, and she's getting like all up on Skeletor. And I'm like, huh? He's just bones, right? How's this going to work? So I don't know. There's another terrible joke there somewhere, but yeah, it's weird. And a friend of mine had pointed out for the '89 Batman film that Bruce Wayne essentially lost his virginity because we had never seen before Batman technically spend the night with anybody. It's like, unless you're a comic book fan, this was your first, exposure to that. And I'm like, Huh, that's kind of right. Because they never alluded to anything like that in the show, did they?
I mean, in a '60s show, there's some weird sexual undertones when you really pay attention to it with him and some of the Catwoman stuff.
Hmm.
But it's never like over the top.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole different thing. Julie Newmar. Ooh, look out. But yeah, it's funny, man. But I thought they handled it tastefully. It is an animated film, folks. I mean, I thought everything was well done. I do find it kind of suspect that Jim Gordon doesn't like the plan to go after Batman. He says, "Hey, he's not a killer. Period. You want to do this? Do it. You do it. I'll have no part of it." And that's the last time we saw Gordon in this film, wasn't it?
Yeah, it essentially is.
Dude, I didn't buy that. I know it's just animated film. He's the commissioner of the police force. He's not going to sign off on anything unless he feels that they need to go after someone. But he left it up to this guy who then ordered the police around. Like, that feels all kind of weird to me. Was there a reason why they didn't want Gordon in this story? Was there a reason to not have him included?
I just think that nobody would have believed that Gordon would try and hunt down Batman.
Yeah.
Which there's a great episode of the animated series where um, Barbara has like this nightmare that she dies as Batgirl, and Gordon unmasks her as she's dying and finds out, and he goes on like this whole thing where he basically acknowledges that he knows that Bruce is Batman, and he comes and he brings all of the police force and he breaks into the cave and tries to arrest him. And
Wow.
there's a scene where somebody's getting ready to shoot Bruce as he's getting away, and Alfred jumps on the guy and they arrest Alfred. It's so good.
God, this is sounding familiar. I'm pretty sure I've seen this, but it's been years since I've seen it.
Yeah, but it ends up being a nightmare put on by the Scarecrow's fear toxin.
Ah, there you go. Yeah.
And we find that out at the end of the episode. And then like there's this great scene at the end of the episode where she talks to Jim, and she's like, and he just goes, "I don't want to know. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of all of you."
Right. Yeah. Wow. I have to go back and look that up. Um, I do. I got to throw this into the bit about the Gotham World's Fair. Kind of felt like the Stark Expo from the Captain America film.
I really like the scene of them showing the car, and he's standing there looking at the car, and she goes, "What are you thinking about?" And he goes, "The future."
Yes, that was so cool. Yeah, I like the way they tried to connect the dots for this guy, and and we kind of know that DC's, in terms of going to other mediums with their characters, doesn't like to play fast and loose with origin stories. But they were willing to, I guess, give the animated series folks a good bit of rope to add some details and to tweak things here and there. Um, but I
Yeah.
like that. I think that we need this part of his story. I wish this part of his story, and like you said, I thought the Rachel stuff from Batman Begins was probably the best, the closest that they've got to it. I still think that they should go back down this road at some point because we always talk about, well, Batman doesn't have powers, he's human, like a normal guy. But then you see him get stabbed and doesn't sell it, and he's stitching himself up in the Batcave where Alfred's doing it, and he's scarred and beat and tortured and bruised, but he goes right back out the next night. That's not human to me. That feels like something else. But when you add a woman to it, it's humanizing him, and it's making him feel like this guy he's got a soft side. Look at the way he is with her versus the way he is with everyone else. I mean, I think that's an aspect that maybe they haven't explored enough.
Yeah, I mean, if you could say anything about this movie, it definitely humanizes Batman a lot. Um, I mean, just the stuff with her, and just the fact that he was so hurt when she left, that was it. That was the deciding factor that I have to do this.
Mm.
And I mean, even stuff like we saw him bleed several times in this movie. We see him actually get hurt. Um, like man, that scene where he tries to escape the police and he's like actually getting getting hurt, and that explosion happens, and it looks like he's not going to get away at one point. All of that stuff is great.
Yeah, and he ends up sending his cape and cowl up to the helicopter, and they're shooting at it. Dude, they would have killed him. They were shooting holes through this thing. Like this was them not holding back. I mean, I know it's just
There's so
animated
many
film. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many subtleties to that scene of him sending that horse out there with the cowl on it, and it ends up getting shot up. And when it started getting shot up, you can see Bullock's face change, like he thought he was really dead, and it wasn't like a yeah I got him. It was like, oh no, what have we done? And then when he
Oh,
realized that he got one over him, he looked relieved.
man, I can't sit here and say that I picked up on that.
Yeah, because I think on some levels, as corrupt as Bullock might be, or he might be a screw up, I don't think that he doesn't think on some levels that Batman isn't doing the right thing. I don't think that he went into this looking to kill Batman. I think he wanted to be the guy to say that I brought him in. He wanted to be, he wanted the heroics of saying I brought Batman in, but he didn't want to kill him.
Yeah. It's like, why stop the guy that's, quite frankly, making your job easier? That's an ego thing for a cop, isn't it? It's like, well, you're making us look bad.
Yeah, and I think on some levels, I think he wanted to. And when you look in ego, I think he wanted to be the guy to say I took him down. But no, I don't think he wanted to kill him.
I'm rewatching that scene now. It's a great bit, too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, because
him.
he gassed. Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, him running down the alley without the cow, and he's bleeding and stumbling, so good.
Yeah. I mean, uh, you got to wonder. I mean, did Chris Nolan see some of this as well for Batman Begins? Like some of this feels a lot like the scene from Year One where he's in the building and he calls the bats there. But I wonder how deep they dove for Batman Begins because some of this, yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, I feel like this movie is kind of a middle ground between year one and year two. And it takes pieces from year one and it takes pieces from year two, and I think it makes like a nice blend and makes something new out of it.
Yeah, I agree. Um, yeah, this is man, it's such a good film. I still, as we sit here doing this, I still want to see this film being played out. And I'm the guy that usually says, leave it alone. Like you said, just leave it alone. We don't need it to be something it's not. We don't need to change it. Why do you have to put your hands on it again? Just leave it alone. But I don't know. I don't know. Part of me says, well, you can't take this original film away. It's still a classic. Fans still love it. Um, but if you did a representation of it in live action and kept it, again, it's an Elseworld story. It doesn't have to be in continuity for anybody. You can do an entire new cast and just do it for this one film. But they don't think in those terms, Phil. They want to do like, hey, you signed to do this. Would you be willing to play this character like 47 more times? It's like, no, I just want to do this. So,
Yeah.
but somehow Joaquin Phoenix dodged that bullet. He said, I'm never doing this again. And they said, okay. How'd that happen?
I have no idea.
Because he's Joaquin Phoenix, I guess. The only thing I got.
Guess so.
Um, yeah, it's a good film, man. I really enjoy this. And you said to me more than one time, this is your favorite Batman film. Is that still true?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that there's so many parts of it that I connect with. Um, whether it be the backstory between him and Andrea, um, just certain things with him feeling like he had to do this, and his obsession with the mission. Um, I don't know. I just find there's something so fascinating, like I said, about his belief in his fellow man. But there's also a part of him that is just very much a realist.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
it's weird because he's the character is optimistic in some ways, but he's also the ultimate cynic. Like I think he deep down realizes that most people will let you down. but he still goes out there and does this because nobody else will.
Right. At the cemetery, he's saying I can give more money and give money to the city. They can hire more cops, let someone else take the risk. He said, I need it to be different now. I need you to understand. I just want to be happy. Can I just be happy? And yeah, like the Joker's line that you mentioned earlier, he's just a little kid in this scene, asking for permission to be happy. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That's great.
I think that the scene at the cemetery makes him standing there with the ring after she gives it back even more heartbreaking.
Oh yeah, big time, big time. Um, so I know this is your favorite uh, Batman film, and I have to say it's up there for me. I just think it does so many things very well, and some of the kookiness of it, and some of the witty banter, because it's comic book stuff and some of the comic book science. But it's an animated film about a comic book character, so I'm good with all that stuff. Obviously, I mean I really enjoy this movie. I do think it holds up over time. And this movie had a budget of 5.6 million, and they only and or no, it was a budget of 6 million. They only made 5.6. This was not a runaway smash hit in today's terms, but it didn't need to be. This didn't need to be, I guess, blockbuster opening weekend sellout number one for 2 straight weeks. I don't even know how it charted. If you do this now, it's probably a different story. But at the time, you know, comic books being everywhere was sort of not happening too awful much. It was 93. We still didn't have a Spider-Man film or an X-Men film. So you do this movie now, it's a different conversation. Um, do you ever think about why is there not as we continue to do more Batman films, we've recast again every character. Yay, yeehaw, let's do it again, kids. Why not dive back into the world, the animated universe, and do another of this type? I mean, what's stopping us? Has there been any chatter? Is there a reason why they're not moving forward? Is it Paul Dini? Is it what's going on? Do you know?
Well, I mean, I think that they made a lot of animated movies. I mean, we got the Sub-Zero movie, we got the Batman Beyond movie,
True.
um, we got the Batwoman movie. But boy, once they jumped the shark and they started doing that stuff with the Batgirl romance, I did not want any of
Oh no,
that.
no.
I did not want any of that, and it's supposedly canon actually in the animated
Oh
universe.
jeez.
And they've been seeding it like it's there in the Batman Beyond stuff. It's there in some of the movie stuff. I mean, even if you pay attention to that Batwoman movie, it's there. It's just like, I don't want this.
That's frightening. Yeah, I don't want any of that stuff. I'm just curious as to why we haven't gone to this particular. But if they're gonna, yeah, ooh, now I'm just depressed now. Once again, the fine folks at DC snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. It seems. I just don't understand. I don't understand why we can't just let stuff be good and leave it alone.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's one of the few things that I did not like about the Denny universe, that they insisted on trying to put that Barbara and Bruce romance in there that I don't want it.
Yeah,
Uh-uh.
it's horrible. It's horrible. I just don't get it. I don't get why we have to go there. I guess that answers my previous question of why we can't do this in the live action films about going to Bruce's romantic side. Maybe we just shouldn't mess with it because this is what the DC people do.
And I mean, I think they've done good stuff with his romantic life, either with Catwoman. Um, they've done other characters that they've done interesting stuff with. They've done interesting stuff with Talia al Ghul.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't need this. Yeah, we don't need that. This weird romance with him and Barbara that feels very creepy. No.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, in terms of this film, they didn't go there. Freaking thank God. They just left it alone. So yeah, if all they're going to do is screw it up, yeah, you know what? I just leave it alone. That'll be my vote. Um, Any chance of a part 2 to this film? Has there I don't know that I've ever heard any talk of it, but would you be interested in a part 2? And if so, what could they do with the story now after this?
Well, I don't know if you've seen it. They've done a very good epilogue um to kind of this movie and Batman Beyond in Justice League.
Interesting.
Um, and the Justice League Unlimited, one of the very last episodes is titled the epilogue, and it is a origin story for Terry McGinnis. And in the story, it's I don't know if you've watched Batman Begins, right?
Oh
Well,
yeah.
Batman Beyond, right?
Oh yeah.
And so Terry becomes Batman because his dad dies when the Jokers come and they kill him, and then he ends up working for Bruce. Um, there's a backstory where Bruce is actually his dad. Um,
Ooh.
he and that's why they look so similar. Like he had DNA, inseminated, um, and this was all a plot by Amanda Waller because she decided that the world needs a Batman. And so in the epilogue, she hires an assassin to kill Terry's parents in front of him so that he will have the same trauma that made him Batman. And the assassin that she hires is Phantasm.
Wow.
It's
That
so good. And so it ends up she ends up not going through it. Andrea has an argument with Amanda and she tells her, "You're missing the point of what makes Batman Batman." And that's why I cannot do this. I cannot do this to Terry because it goes against everything that Bruce believes in.
wow.
That's that's also where that great scene comes from of Batman sitting with Ace until she dies.
Mhm.
It comes from that episode.
Interesting. I'm looking it up right now. Wow, I didn't know this even existed. That's
It's
crazy.
very good. If you haven't seen it, it's a good it's a good kind of a cap to Batman Beyond, and it is a great nod to Mask of the Phantasm.
Interesting.
Um, and I mean, yeah, it's Phantasm when they show her in the show. She takes off the mask and it's Andrea. She's older. It's great.
So, wonder why there wasn't a push to include her in regular continuity, or has there been? Has she appeared in the books?
I'm not sure if she's appeared in the books. I know that she's appeared in. I know that appeared in like some of the comics related to the animated series because there's a run of comics that was in the same universe as the animated series at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And I know she was in an issue of that, but I don't think that she was like an actual comic character. No, I could be wrong. Um,
She's made occasional appearances in various DC animated universe Batman media as Phantasm, often as a freelance assassin working with Amanda Waller, as you said. In December 2020, Beaumont made her main DC Universe comic book debut in Tom King's Batman Catwoman 12-issue maxi series. Interesting. Well, if it's Tom King, I'm sure it's worth reading. So interesting. Yeah. Um. Do you you can't even really call her a villain, can you? Can you really call her like
no, she's not really a villain. She's kind of like an antagonist.
like a Punisher, right?
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah. So in the scene near the end where he's begging her, he's like, "Don't do this," and she says it's too late or whatever she says, and then she bamps away with Joker. Let's say he talks her down. What happens then? Like, wouldn't he be compelled to turn her into the police? I mean, would he? She's a murderer. I mean, what happens after that? I wonder.
Well, I mean, with I think at that point when she's standing there and he is seeing that she is not who he thought she was anymore. In some ways, like she just lost that innocence that he had that she saw in him. I mean, well, he saw in her eventually at the beginning of the movie, and so it was never going to be the same again. Like they were never going to have what they had, and I think they both realized that. And I think she also realized that he was always going to choose the mission. He was never going to be completely. He was never going to be completely in a committed relationship with her. It wasn't going to work. Um, Now, I've always wondered, like after the smoke goes up, what does she do? Because clearly she gets away. We see that at the end of the movie.
Yep.
But Joker, once again, kind of ends up in an explosion or something and doesn't die because Joker. Uh, um, but I've always assumed it was one of those things where she went to maybe push him closer to the explosion at the last minute, and she just didn't go through with it and just ran off.
Interesting. She must have, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't call her a villain either. And I wonder, to your point, had she not left town, had her dad not screwed around, got in trouble, um, if things could have been different. It's so funny trying to fantasy book a character that's existed for since 1939. That's insane.
Yeah, and I always wonder. I kind of feel like the point of the movie is that he was always gonna choose the mission. I don't think he believed enough
Hmm.
in people to make the decision to stay with her, um, whether she left or not. Um, I think her leaving was an excuse enough for him to say that, well, she left.
Right. I think as evidenced by the fact that his proposal was not half-hearted, but number one, he's a kid. He didn't know what to do. Didn't know how to say it. But then, like, was he really committed to this? Was he going through the motions? Yeah.
I think he had decided that he was so happy that um, he wanted this to work,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes you want things to work, and kind of as that adage goes, if you want something to work but you're expecting it to fail, it'll fail. It'll find a way to fail because you'll you'll make it fail. Like you'll manifest it.
Ah. Yeah. That's a great take.
It and I think that that's kind of what happened here. And I think that her leaving was just her acceptance that he needed this. He needed to be Batman. He needed the mission, and she had gone too far. Like she was not the person he met, and they could not be together. Because it's weird because he hadn't let go of the mission, and she hadn't let go of the anger from the way she lost her dad. Um, and I think that she confused what he's doing with vengeance, and I don't think that's simply what he's doing.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. His mission's much more layered than Punisher's.
Yeah, his mission isn't just simply vengeance. If it was vengeance, he would be going out and doing what she did, killing people.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes the Alfred scene after everything happens so good. That he's like, no, she made her choice.
Yeah. Because he knows he can't change her no more than she can change him.
There's so many great Alfred scenes with them where he'll come in a room and they're like kissing, he'll go, oh, and just walk out. It's so funny.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember something else he does in this. He's very funny.
Oh man, when he's when he says, "You think you know everything about me, don't you?" And then he goes, "As someone who's diapered you, I should, sir."
Yeah, yeah. I've doppered your bottom. Yeah, that's good. Um, yeah, what was it he says? He says, "My suggest taking up rugby, sir." And this was after he had done the thing with the ski mask on. It's like, no,
Or
no, Alfred, the plan is working. He's in the gi and he's like jumping around and stuff. And yeah,
he goes, "Man, someone would question your sanity, sir. I put your tights aside and your little gas balls."
yeah, yeah. I think Alfred's his best when he is sort of, um, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good example of what kind of character he is.
Yeah, the dry humor always works very well with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my favorite episodes of the animated series is when he goes out to that spa with like his woman friend. They never really say if that's his girlfriend, but
Yeah,
he
I don't.
goes
Yeah.
out to that spa with all those other old people, and it's like they're doing like the renew you stuff, and then it turns out that this is all like a plan for by Poison Ivy, and Batman had to come and save him.
Yes, that's good.
Um, yeah, Alfred's great in the animated series. Uh,
And not just to compare him because he's another butler, but Jeffrey from Fresh Prince at times feels like Alfred from the animated series, where he'll just throw a little jab. His is more personal, I think, than Alfred, but Alfred is good for walking through a room and just throwing a little bit one liner and then walking back out, which is good. I respect that. So
Yeah, I think it's great. It's very close to how Michael Caine plays him in the Nolan movies as
yeah,
well,
yeah,
where he'll have like something sarcastic, where he's like, "Whatever, I guess we're doing this."
yeah.
Uh, but man, I have yet to see any Batman scene any more iconic than him putting the cowl on for the first time. It's perfect.
Yeah, it's great. I don't think there's enough impact on that. Like, I do think Nolan got it right with the first time he's in action in Batman Begins, where you don't see him and he's just pulling guys through the shadows, because that's what Batman should be. It shouldn't be every single shot is full head to toe in the suit where he's talking. Batman should be cloaked in shadow, man. You know, that should be who he is. So I love that.
Yeah, I agree. But I just that first time of him putting the cowl on and deciding basically that no, I cannot go back now. There's no going back.
Yeah.
This is the decision. Yeah, and I mean it's man again to so many subtle things they do with this movie. Man, he made that decision and he put the cowl on, and it's such a there's so much gravitas to that scene. But when Andrea saves him, he doesn't have the cowl on because he was forced to take it off to escape.
Right.
And that's when, without the cowl, again, he's making this decision. He's there, literally in the Batman suit without the mask, and he's making it. He's questioning his decision again.
Because he feels empowered with the mask on.
It's so many subtle, interesting things they do in this movie.
Yeah. Who would have thought subtlety would work in a comic book film? But it's possible. Um,
Yeah, I also think this is the first time as a kid, have ever seen Batman punch one of the Joker's teeth out.
oh, it's great. It's great. What a great moment. Yeah. Yeah. Same here. Like Nicholson took some fists to the face, some hard punches in Batman '89, big time.
Yeah,
But and he bloodies his mouth too. I'm pretty sure in that film.
yeah,
Yeah. What do you mean I killed your parents? I killed lots of guys' parents. It's just what a great comeback. Like what a horrible thing to say, but what a great comeback.
yeah. I mean, look, the animated movie is great, but there's so many good things I like about the '89 movie. And man, Nicholson is just so great.
Yes,
He's
he
so
is.
great at Joker.
He is. Well, yeah, this again, I can't say enough good things about this movie. As Phil said, it's nuanced. There's subtleties happening. There's so many layers. It backs up what we've said for years. The folks, and you know, this doesn't count the Batgirl stuff, kids. Let me preface this comment with this: unless you're the big budget guys, there just doesn't seem to be getting this right too awful much to a large degree. It's close, but the original animated series, the DCCW shows, I mean, there's more heart, there's more attention to detail, there's more storytelling, there's time, obviously, to tell a story, but it just seems like there's more layering happening instead of, well, we got 2.5 hours, we better cram as much crap in as we can. Um, it's the benefit of streaming, obviously, and the benefit of a series is just to be able to tell a story. But the animated series to me stands out. This movie in particular, so many great moments in this film. Highly recommend it. Um, if this is your favorite Batman film, what's your second favorite, Phil?
Oh, that's
Like, if not for this film, this other film would be your favorite Batman movie. Is it Begins?
it might be Dark Knight. Just because Dark Knight is just so good. Um, might be Dark Knight. I do really like Begins. I don't know. I yeah, it's probably Dark Knight.
Hmm.
Um, but I also really like the Burton movies.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like I'm a bigger fan of Batman Returns than most people.
Right. It's not a bad movie.
I really like Batman Returns. I really enjoy the stuff between Bruce and Catwoman. I really enjoy the way that Danny DeVito plays Penguin. He has so many great one-liners in that movie that are either very gross and weird,
Yes.
but they're funny. Like uh like him laughing at the guy. He's like, huh, yeah, that is really funny. At least my nose isn't gushing with blood. He's like, what? And then he bites his nose.
Oh, it's horrible. And then when the big guy says, uh, killing kids though, isn't that a little? And then he like, I think he kills him. And he goes, "No, it's a lot." Like that's
Yeah, he goes, isn't it a little much?
yeah,
No, it's a lot. Or him running away from him running away when they start throwing the tomatoes at him. Why does everybody always bring tomatoes
yeah,
to a public speech? And he starts shooting with the umbrella gun.
man, yeah. My favorite bit is Pat Hingle as Commissioner Gordon holding up the bag of evidence of the Batarang, and he goes, "This is just circumstantial evidence on camera for the whole world to see." Like, and he's just got that deadpan delivery. So, yeah. Whew, that's rough. Well, there you have it, kids. That's our take on Mask of the Phantasm. Again, highly recommended. If you've never seen it, do yourself a favor. It's a fine Batman film, very fine indeed. So, Phil, take this thing home from me, my friend. Give me your last word on Mask of the Phantasm.
Uh man, I think of, like I said, my favorite Batman movie, it's easily Mask of the Phantasm. Um there are just too many scenes in it that hit you in the feels. Um it's just, to me, a perfect summation of what makes uh what makes Batman human, and what makes the dark aspects of his character so compelling.
Yeah, absolutely. It hits all the right beats. It does everything right. It really does. I don't, there's a little bit of camp in this film, but you expect that, and it's fine. It's taken in small doses, but it works. And Mark Hamill is amazing, as we said at the jump. So is Conroy. The voice cast is stellar. The animation's great. The music, which we haven't spoke a lot about, is awesome. It's just so good, so powerful, so moving. This movie, again, highly recommend Mask of the Phantasm. Whether or not the DC folks will ever get it this good again with a live action film, well, you know what? There's always tomorrow. There's always the next one. We cross our fingers in anticipation of the next one. Maybe, just maybe, they'll get it right this time. We'll see.
What is Speaking of music, what is the song that plays when the closing credits comes up? And I always remember it because I've seen this movie so many times, and
My
I
God.
always think about when the credits start rolling up. It has like that long saxophone playing. It's like, what is this? It's like very adult.
It is. God, it
It's
feels,
it does not feel like a song made for a animated movie.
yeah, it feels like something that would go on after like Lethal Weapon has ended or something.
It does. It does. And every time it comes on, I'm like, I know that this is Mask of the Phantasm because I haven't heard that song anywhere else.
No, no, I can't say for sure it's exclusively done for the
Like
soundtrack, but
I've fallen asleep and I had HBO or something on, like at numerous points in my life, and woke up and heard that song and looked up and like seeing the credits roll, and I was like, oh, I missed Mask of the Phantasm. That was on.
because of the song.
Yeah.
It's great. Um I'm looking that up now because I was thinking the same thing after it went off. I actually forgot about that tune being on this. Let's see. Yeah. It's one of those. Like, because it's not in the film. It's not in the film.
No. It feels like it's one of those things that was made specifically for the movie, but it's not in the movie.
Get this. The song is I Never Even Told You, performed by Tia Carrere. Yeah. Wayne's girlfriend, dude.
Tia Carrere, you say?
Yes. Wayne's girlfriend sung the song to Batman Mask of the Phantasm. She's not just the incredibly hot bass player from Crucial Taunt. She's also the singer of the Mask of the Phantasm film. So, there you go. You learn something new every day, folks. Another reason to go watch this film. Because you get, and funny enough, isn't her character's name in Wayne's World Andrea? Or am I getting that wrong?
What is her name in Wayne's World? Oh, God.
Dude, I think it is.
Cassandra.
I really wanted it to be Andrea. That would have been great. You're right. It's Cassandra. Oh, I never would have picked that was who was singing this song, but there you go. All right, kids. Well, that's it for us. Again, we gave you another reason to go watch it. For God's sake, go watch it. Go watch it again if you haven't seen it in a while, because it holds up incredibly well. And like we said earlier, we'll cross our fingers they get it right again, perhaps in live action. We'll find out soon. But in the meantime, that is Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.